teams in the SEC and their win totals for 2025, and if they will go over or under these numbers, courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. Our first victim here is LSU, the 2019-2020 national champions. It's been 5 years now. Can they get back to the top? Their first game of the year, a rematch of that game against Clemson, primetime ABC that first Saturday. It's going to be a loaded day, capping off there in Death Valley. A tough road game to open the season, but guys, I'm calling it right now. I've said the Heisman contender, Garrett Nussmeier, the Nuss Bus, get on right now, buy stock in his Heisman odds, because LSU is going to win this game on the road. They're going to beat Clemson, and they're going to go back home to play Louisiana Tech, a nice ESPN Plus primetime game there. It's going to be 63-13. LSU wins that game, and they're 2-0 starting SEC play against Florida. It's going to be a close game. I'm going to go LSU to win that game as well, and they are 3-0. And then another Louisiana team, Southeast Louisiana, another prime. Look at that, 4 primetime games in a row for LSU. Kind of weird start to the year there. And this game is going to be 76-0. LSU beats up on a FCS school. Very sad to see that. So at this point, LSU is 4-0, and then playing at Ole Miss. That's probably going to be a 3 o'clock, maybe a 4 o'clock afternoon game. And I see LSU losing that game on the road. A high-scoring 42-38 shootout, but they dropped their first game of the year. And then at home against South Carolina after the bye week, LSU 5-1 there. At Vanderbilt, let's say 6-1. Texas A&M at home. A coin flip right now. I'm going to say they dropped that one to Texas A&M, so they're 6-2. And then at Alabama, if they had Joe Burrow, I would say they win this game. But Nussmeier isn't quite Joe Burrow, so they fall to 6-3. And then they beat Arkansas at home 7-3. They beat Western Kentucky by 40 points. They're 8-3. And then here it is to go over on the total, the last game of the year at Oklahoma, at Norman, right down the street from where I live, right here. Can they win this true road game against OU and the new look revamped offense? I'm going to say yes. LSU goes in there, wins this game by 7, 28-21, and they finish the season 9-3. Take the over 8.5, guys. Good value there with the Nuss Bus. And LSU wins 9 games this year. Going to the next team, Georgia, the 2-time national champions this decade, the Georgia Bulldogs. And they open the season on ESPN against Marshall. Why is a Sun Belt team playing on ESPN? I don't know. That game's going to be 56-3, Georgia. And then Austin Peay. Remember a few years ago, Austin Peay was leading Tennessee like late in the second quarter. Kind of an aside there, but Georgia wins that game 64-14. So they're 2-0, 2 bye games, 2 blowouts, and then at Tennessee, always a fun game there. This one's a big one. A few years ago, it was 1v2, I think, and Tennessee was number 1. Georgia beat them. This year, I'm going to say Georgia wins. I don't know, is Gunnar Stockton even good? 2 weeks later, a rematch against Alabama. So last year, it was the best football game I ever watched in my life. Georgia-Alabama, late September 2024, an all-time classic. What a great game that was. Back and forth at the end there. The great comeback by Carson Beck. I'm going to say Georgia loses again this year at home. Alabama's just too good of an offense, and Georgia does not have the weapons this year, so they fall to 3-1. And then against Kentucky, I'm going to give them a win there, so that's 4-1. At Auburn, probably 5-1. And then I think they slip up at home against Ole Miss, so that's 2 home losses already. They haven't lost at home in like 5 years. That's 2 already. And they're 5-2 on the year. And then at Florida, ooh, that one's tough. I'm going to say they lose that game as well. They lose to Florida. They're 5-3. They do bounce back at Miss State. They're 6-3. They lose to a top 10, top 5 Texas team. They're 6-4. They beat Charlotte. They're 7-4. And then at Georgia Tech, it's a neutral site game this year, the Georgia Tech game. Unfortunately, playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, it's kind of a shame for the rivalry game there, but I'm going to say Georgia wins that game, and they finish the year 8-4, well under their total of 9.5, and they go under. Good value there in Georgia. Still a good team. They're going to be a top 5 SEC school, but really not a national title contender this year. And one more team here, it's Alabama, and they open the season against Florida State, a dinosaur of a program. Last year's abysmal season. Can they bounce back this year? So Bama always wins these opening week games by like a bunch of points. It just seems to be a trend, and it continues this year. Alabama wins this game 34-13 against Florida State in a early season thrashing there. And then UL Monroe in week 2, primetime SEC network, 52-10. Alabama wins that game. They're 2-0. Wisconsin at home. You know, Bama's always sketchy against these Big Ten teams. I'm going to say they win this one, and they're 3-0. And then at Georgia, I said they win that one already. So Bama's 4-0 in the year. Vanderbilt, a rematch of last year's horrific upset on the road. Can they get revenge this year? I'm going to say yes. Bama's 5-0, a top 5 team. At Missouri, it's a noon game for some reason, so they win that one. They're 6-0. The third Saturday in October against Tennessee at home. Bama wins this one by a field goal, and they are 7-0, looking to go over really easily here. Here's the big one at South Carolina. Once in a blue moon, they play there. I think they trip up here, lose to South Carolina on the road, and fall to 7-1. And then against LSU, I already said, I believe Bama beats LSU this year. They're 8-1. At home against Oklahoma, another team they lost to last year, Oklahoma. Can they get revenge? I'm going to say Oklahoma wins this game. I have vibes right now. They go into Bryant-Denny. They win the game. Kind of a shock upset there. Bama falls to 8-2. They beat Eastern Illinois. I can't believe they're playing Eastern Illinois. That is ridiculous. So they're 9-2, and then at Auburn, the Iron Bowl. Auburn's going to be okay this year, but not really a great team. So Bama wins that game, and they finish the year 10-2 with their total going over. You could easily say 11 wins here if they beat Oklahoma, or if they win at South Carolina. They could easily win 11 games this year. So over 9.5 is a really good value there for Bama. So guys, that's it for this video. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bye.